Everyone has moments in life they can't just stop thinking about. They can be embarrassing things, like that one time you face planted in front of a group of teenagers, or something amazing like the first time you hosted your family for the holidays. And on Baby, This is Keke Palmer, hosted by me, Keke Palmer, and presented by BMW, we know to savor the good memories and let go of the bad. And one thing everyone remembers fondly is their first time behind the wheel of a BMW. So come join me and BMW this summer as we explore pop culture moments and topics you just can't stop thinking about on Baby, This is Keke Palmer, sponsored by BMW, the ultimate driving machine.
As a person with a very deep voice, I'm hired all the time for advertising campaigns. But a deep voice doesn't sell B2B, and advertising on the wrong platform doesn't sell B2B either. That's why if you're a B2B marketer, you should use LinkedIn ads. LinkedIn has the targeting capabilities to help you reach the world's largest professional audience. That's right, over 70 million decision makers all in one place. All the big wigs, then medium wigs, also small wigs who are on the path to becoming big wigs. Okay, that's enough about wigs. LinkedIn ads allows you to focus on getting your B2B message to the right people. So, does that mean you should use ads on LinkedIn instead of hiring me, the man with the deepest voice in the world? Yes. Yes, it does. Get started today and see why LinkedIn is the place to be to be. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room? It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together, we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th.
We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
And welcome back to Scarred for Life, the podcast where we open up old wounds by looking back at the films that scared us as kids. I'm Terry.
And I'm Mary Beth.
In each episode, our special guest brings with them a movie that traumatized them as a child.
This week, our guest is Meagan Navarro. She's the head critic and chief content creator for Bloody Disgusting and co-hosts the Bloody Disgusting podcast. Welcome to the show, Meagan!
Hello! Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us. You've been on our list for a long time, and I'm so glad that we made this happen. Because
you just had to reach out and ask. Yeah, I would have been there from the get-go. Yeah.
I know. It's one of those like Twitter things where it's like, are we what do we do? Because it kind of Twitter breeds that sort of sense of knowing someone, but then do you really, you know what I mean? So thank you. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Yeah, I'm thrilled.
Okay, so before we talk about the good stuff I'm really excited to talk about this movie. Let's take it back to the very beginning. How did you get introduced to horror?
Well, my dad was a big movie person, and he loved going to the video store every week, and I obviously would go with him. I was like 4, and somehow, and this really started after he let me watch Ghostbusters, and I was obsessed with all of the monsters and the library ghost and all of that. And it just kind of turned into this obsession with monsters. So when I would go with him to the video store, he would be browsing the new release wall, and I would go look for the places where the monsters were, which was the horror section.
Hell yeah.
And I was lucky to have a dad who never thought to censor what I watched, you know.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Like, for him, horror was make-believe. So, you know, as long as I knew that, like, then there you go. So yeah, I basically spent every week eager to go with him so I could pick out a cover box monster and watch accordingly, which also meant I could stretch the boundaries of what was horror, because fantasy was right next to it and sci-fi was right next to it. Those have monsters as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, that's really where the lifelong obsession, it started super young for me.
So did you kind of have carte blanche to whatever you wanted in that horror section?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean,
That's
there
amazing.
were occasions where my mom would come with, and she's always impatient, so she would try and steer me into the stuff that looked a little more kid friendly. But I was and remain pretty headstrong. I know what monsters I need in my life, Mom. Thank you.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm carte blanche.
So, do you remember the first horror movie you ever saw? Was it Ghostbusters?
I mean, Ghostbusters was my entry point, period. But beyond that, I don't know. I remember things like Pet Sematary devastated me. I was super into Chucky and Nightmare on Elm Street, things that were too young, but I watched. Yeah, so those were kind of all the early follow-ups to Ghostbusters.
Cool. I love that. Yeah, it's kind of, I talked about this on the podcast a lot, that my parents in the beginning were kind of like that. So I watched a whole lot of R-rated stuff that I probably shouldn't have. And then they became, unfortunately, a little bit more conservative and were like, yeah, no.
I did not have that. I did not have that at all. Yeah.
Do you remember some of your childhood favorites then?
For sure. I was a Freddy girl. I think just because it's so whimsical that, the more far-fetched. Another childhood favorite was The Blob, and it still is to this day one of my favorites. A lot of the creature feature heavy stuff were what I gravitated to because of Ghostbusters, but The Blob, The Fly, all of that stuff.
Me too. That was my favorites. They going towards those the gory special effects heavy monster movies of the 80s.
Yes,
perfect.
and if the cover didn't have a lot of monsters, I remember picking up the cover to Rabid a lot when I was a kid, and but I never wanted to because I'm where are the monsters? I didn't.
Where are the monsters?
It's just a girl in a freezer. I don't understand. That was a picture on the cover box, on the back of the cover. That's what. So I didn't want to watch it, and I didn't watch it till much later. And I think that was a wise choice because child me probably would not have appreciated that one at all. But yeah.
But why would you watch that when you have the Blob pouring over a man that is being dissolved on the front cover?
And that cover is brilliant. I mean, I did watch a lot of duds because of covers, don't get me wrong, but yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, how old were you when you saw Ghostbusters? Do you remember how old you were?
4.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. So you got started early.
Very early. Yeah, very early. Birthday party, Ghostbuster cakes from when I was 4 and 5, and I had to have all the toys and the Egon action figures, yeah.
I went to go see Ghostbusters Afterlife at the Alamo, and they always do the 30 minutes before, where they play a lot of stuff, and they were doing a lot of the toys from the real Ghostbusters era, and it was oh my gosh, nostalgia bomb, because I remember having those toys, the one where there's this woman that her mouth opens up, and
yes, she was a teacher with the beehive. Yes, yes. I coveted that townhouse. I never got the townhouse, but I wanted it so bad. I did have junk that I didn't want, that I thought I wanted. Do you remember the Ghostbusters? It looked like toothpaste, green toothpaste, and it came out like toothpaste, but you chew it and it turns into gum, and it's so gross. Even, yeah, that was a thing that existed, but it had Ghostbusters branding, therefore I needed it in my life.
They had commercials of people brushing their teeth with Ghostbusters toothpaste, and it was I remember I had that Slimer toothpaste.
Yep. Yeah.
And Mary Beth was staring at us so confused. I'm telling you.
She's grossed out. Yeah, understandably.
Mary Beth,
I think that might have been a little bit before my time.
The marketing, especially in the 80s, the way they marketed stuff to kids was ridiculous. The cereal.
Yeah. Do you remember Toxic Crusaders, where they tried to child-friendly traumas Toxic Avengers? Yeah.
I certainly do. I had some of those toys.
Yeah, I remember that coloring book. Yeah.
Never saw a single one of the movies, but I owned the toys.
Yes, you could buy Toxic Avenger coloring books, but instead of Avenger, it was Crusader. That's gonna make this Christian whatever.
I was gonna say, somehow Crusader's worse than Avenger in my brain, but
but it was the the precursor to Captain Planet. So it's crazy.
Yeah, I remember those. I remember the Swamp Thing toys that were back in the day. I even remember the Alien when they started like releasing the Alien toys, those action figures.
Best place to find toys were always thrift stores too. Like I would look for things because you could find so many monsters in the toy bin, and I had no clue what they were from at all. Like after the longest time, I had this vampire that was like this purple robed vampire holding a cat, and I thought it was the best thing ever. And it wasn't till this year that I realized it was from freaking like Voltron. And it was a witch. But in my mind, I'm like, this has got to be from Subspecies or something, right?
I think I might have had that toy.
Did you?
Now that I think about it, I think so.
It's like Voltron or Robotech or something. Totally not vampire.
I tell you, man, toys in the 80s were the best.
Well, and like I grew up in the 90s, early 2000s, but I had my uncles were not much older than me, and they had a bunch of old wrestling toys too, and I loved the shit out of those. I had no idea what they were, but like wrestling action figures, incredible. Like, what?
Yes. Toys. See, we are an easy mark as kids for horror.
We are. Absolutely. I mean, it continues into adults. I need that new shirt. I have like 20 Alien shirts, but there's a new one. I must have it.
Yes.
Other than the movie that we're talking about today, were there any other horror movies that really scared you as a kid?
Yes, there were two. And really it has to do with more parts of the movie than the movie as a whole. Like obviously Pet Sematary was a big one, but the two that freaked me out that I literally watched from behind the couch, like the couch was going to protect me if the thing came out of the TV somehow. The Zuni doll from Trilogy of Terror.
Okay.
Totally messed me up as a child, and so did the scene. And it's so funny now when you look back at it, but it was Linda in Evil Dead 2 when she came out and they did that weird like inhuman stop motion shit
dance.
Like that warped me so bad. And this again was like the middle of the day. My uncle was watching it and I was like, what is this nightmare? Yeah, those two fucked me up.
Did movies, do you remember, because it sounds like you watched a whole lot of horror movies. Were you ever scared as a kid watching them, aside from like the ones or twos that like really hit you, or did you breeze through them?
Not really. I mean, like there were parts that bothered me a lot. Like, you know, again, the Pet Sematary thing, but for that one, it had to do with the truck. Like, I still vividly remember having a nightmare of Lurch from Addams Family driving a semi-truck down this, like, heavily wooded road. And so the truck itself is what scarred me there. But yeah, it was things that had to do with dolls were probably more freaky for me. So, like, Chucky, too, when he rolled under the bed, that, like, when you see a little doll and you don't know where it is. So, like, dolls were tend to get me more than anything as a child. But for the most part, it's like, yeah, they're going to kick these monsters' butts. Or, yeah, monsters, rawr. I want to be Freddy's friend. Like, what kind of psycho child was I? I don't know. But
I was the same.
Yeah, okay, then we are twin psychos. We are peas in a pod. Yeah.
I love Freddy. And I'm like, you know, as an adult, you're looking back going like, he was a child killer? And I hinted at that he was kind of a child molester in some parts. So
I know, but kid brains don't pick up on this. I want to be his friend. Instead, it's like, oh yeah, turn that crazy bodybuilder into a cockroach, because that's crazy cool.
Okay, so I have to know, what is I mean, we're not going to include the first one. What is other than the first one, what's your favorite of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies?
I'm going to say 3.
Okay.
But I will be a staunch defender of 4. I know a lot of people hate that, but
4 is my favorite.
Terry and Megan, you're just vibing.
4 is my favorite.
I love it.
It is my favorite. It might also be because like that's the one that I actually owned on beta, not on VHS.
Oh, I remember the beta days. Yeah. Jeez. It's like, where did you grow up? I grew up in Illinois until I moved to Texas. So are we Midwest? Oh, okay. I was going to say maybe it's a Midwest thing, but yeah.
Yeah, no, at that point I was in Alaska, and then we moved here to the Midwest, and I've been in Nebraska ever since. But yeah, no, it was, at that point it was in Alaska. So what draws you to horror now as an adult?
I think it's a lot of things. I think there's always going to be the comfort and nostalgia for me. Like, this has been part of me for as long as I have memory. So I think there's always that. I do love the ability of fear. Like, I like to be scared. I like to be challenged, and that being challenged opens up so much, because I think horror can be so much. It can offer catharsis. It can challenge you, and it can hold up a mirror to society. I think it's the perfect vehicle that makes so much of what is challenging about life more palatable and easier to understand, if that makes sense. So
makes perfect sense.
It's really kind of like an all-encompassing genre for me.
Hell yeah. So, you know, you said you didn't really get scared a lot as a kid, but there were some scenes like that would scare you. Do you ever get scared now watching horror movies? I mean, like, I know that you, like us, watch a shit ton of movies, especially being that critic for bloody, like, so many fucking movies. But do you still get scared?
I do. Not often. But, like, just recently-ish, like, Terrified from a couple years ago.
Yeah.
That one comes up a lot.
Yep.
It does.
It comes up a lot.
And it does, and, like, I saw that at a crowded theater for a film festival and went back to my Airbnb. It was checking drawers and closets like one of those things was going to follow me home. Like, so I think you do grow up with it and you get more desensitized, but it's never gone completely. Like, there are still movies that get me. The Night House had some really effective scares in that one too. So like Annabelle Creation, there's definitely movies out there that do scares so well that I'm very happy that they still get me. Like, I hope that never wears off.
Yeah, same.
I love to hear that. It's not like, you know, because I feel like you watch so many movies all the time. You're like, you don't get scared anymore. I'm like, there are some times though where a movie will get under your skin. So.
Yes, and you usually appreciate the hell out of it. Yeah,
and you don't forget it either. You're like, that movie really got into my brain. And even if it's like, what gets into my brain even more too, or isn't just, I'm thinking about, I just watched The Feast last week, and just like that kind of movie too. It's not like scary per se, but like really fucks with your head a little bit and like just kind of puts its claws into your brain. I love that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, I was just thinking about, like, because I saw Terrified as well in a movie theater at a festival, and I love that it's on Shudder. I love that people are able to freely watch it, but man, what a perfect movie made for the theater.
Yes. Yeah, and I love the energy that you get from a theater experience too. You know, like Hereditary, watching that at home isn't the same as hearing like the staggered gasps of people finally noticing Toni Collette in the corner. Like, that's not something you're going to get at home. And there's, you know, not knocking the home viewing experience, especially lately. But yeah, I love like feeding off of that energy.
The nervous energy that just builds.
I did think that I should watch Terrified by myself with noise-canceling headphones in the dark, and that was, like, the one time where I actually had to pause and, like, turn a light on, because it was, like, fucking me up too much to watch it in the pitch black. Like, it was a lot. I was like, nope, just kidding. Like, this is a really bad idea. No, thank you. But that was a fucking experience.
Yes.
Good God.
Yes.
So do you, I mean, you kind of maybe answered this with Terrified, but do you remember the last movie that truly scared you? Was it Terrified?
Probably. It probably was, because I don't know that there was anything after that was like beginning to end like, oh no, and like went home and turned all the lights on. I think Terrified might have been it.
That makes sense. And then what would you say are your favorite horror movies as an adult?
I think that is probably going to change on a daily basis based on mood. But the one that will never leave, like if I had a top 5 on any given day, there's like 2 that are probably never going to leave that top 5, and that is The Blob remake and The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing. So those 2 will never leave that, but there are 3 other slots that are in rotation.
Yep.
I fucking
I know
love
that feeling.
The Thing.
Yes, it's a perfect movie.
It's a fucking perfect movie.
Absolutely.
So how did you get into writing? both writing and then also writing about horror?
Writing, I mean, something that I think I've always kind of done that I never really thought about, like I'm going to be a writer. I just, would write stories or catalog my dreams because I will have some crazy dreams sometimes, or journaling or whatever. And then at some point I just realized I could do a WordPress and started kind of doing like a journalistic thing there that leaned into horror, where I could just kind of dump my thoughts about different horror things, movies or books, or that time that I tried to make truffles with green filling from a xenomorph ice tray mold. It worked. So yeah,
that's
just like
amazing.
Totally experimental stuff that really existed just to amuse me. And WordPress had that way of kind of linking you to other blogs and stuff. And then that turned into writing for a site, which turned into writing for a site. And this was all free. And eventually it just kind of slowly built and built and built into like getting paid gigs after years of blogging. It's a snowball.
Yep.
Yeah.
The horror movie writer way.
Exactly.
You kind of just like roll your way into paid gigs eventually.
Eventually,
if you're
yeah.
lucky. Eventually.
Eventually.
After a long
Yes,
time.
it requires patience and a lot of perseverance and a lot of not stopping. So, yeah. It's no overnight sensation, that's for sure.
No. How did you get involved with Bloody Disgusting?
Weirdly, so I had gotten a couple of paid gigs through Birth Movies Death. And so I had kind of tentatively, that was my first paid gig, and where I'd started to get, I guess, my foot in the door and realize that, hey, somebody's willing to pay me to write about movies. And then Bloody had put out a call. They were looking for writers and this was on Twitter. So if you are an aspiring writer, like Twitter is the best tool. It's a blessing and a curse. So they put out, and it was really like a link to a Google Doc, and it was like, kind of your standard pitch, tell us your pitch, you tell us about yourself. And I, was a little bit cocky, and I was like, here's my pitches. I gave them multiples, and here's my bylines from Birth Movies Death. Here's a little bit about myself, and you have no female writers right now. So, yeah, and then I didn't hear from them, and I was like, all right, well, that's fine. I shot my shit, there you go, and went about my merry little way, writing for free, and occasionally through Birth Movies Death, and then months go by, and they got back to me, probably because I was one of, I don't know how many thousands that responded to that thing, but yeah, and then, once you get a pitch accepted, keep pitching, and that's what I did, and here's how we snowballed.
Yeah, how long have you been writing for them now? Well, now you're, on staff, but yeah.
Yeah, and that's fairly recent, but probably 4 years. Wow. So, yeah.
Time is fake.
I know. It seems like yesterday, but there's no overnight thing. People put in the work, you just don't see it.
Oh, it just takes forever.
Exactly.
And, Twitter, like you said, I wouldn't have a writing career if it wasn't for Twitter.
Exactly.
It is how I've gotten all of my opportunities, and, that's where a lot of the journalists are.
Exactly.
And, as much of a cesspool as Twitter can be, it's also an incredible, networking tool.
Absolutely.
So
it's a cesspool, but it's a necessary one.
Yeah. Just, don't be a shit on Twitter. Just, don't be one of those people.
Yes,
just, stay out of that and just be nice. Also, editors read when you tweet.
100%.
Just so you know.
I know you know as an editor for Dread, so good job, you. But yeah, from experience and from being inside, I also know for a fact that how you behave on Twitter, editors notice, and you will not get gigs if you're a jerk. And they will remember, and they talk, So, yeah.
Be nice, please.
Be nice. Don't be a jerk. It's not hard.
It isn't. It really isn't. And I always say this, we're just watching horror movies and trying to have a good time.
Yes. Yeah.
But I am curious, since you watched so many movies, what, like, a couple of your favorites from this year? I'm always just curious, because you and I think have pretty similar tastes, too, so I'm always so curious to hear what you love.
Let's see. I feel like I need to pull up and see what's come out this year.
Not to put you on the spot, sorry.
Yeah, no. I mean, there's so many that I'm going to be so mad that I, like, didn't mention this or didn't mention that. I will say, The Boy Behind the Door is definitely one that is it's a butt clencher from beginning to end.
It is.
I love that description's so incredible, but it's such a good way to describe when a movie is so intense and you're just like, oh,
yeah, it's like, yeah, and it's so well done for, you can tell it's a low budget, but like to rest a movie like that on such little shoulders,
and they're so good.
They're so good. So yeah, I cannot endorse that movie enough. The Vigil is so simple, but so incredibly well done, and I love that it's like we're finally getting this new aspect to religious horror that is long overdue. Like, come on.
We've got a number of those this year, which is really awesome.
Yes. I have to plug No One Gets Out Alive just because I thought I was getting into that movie like great as another formulaic haunted house movie, and surprise, it is not that at all. I was thrilled. If you like The Ritual, watch it.
Is that on
Netflix?
Is that on Netflix? Okay.
Netflix.
I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, same Adam Neville universe. So yeah, and I'm sure there's like a ton of other stuff that it's like, why didn't I think of that one? Hopefully that's a starter for you.
Hell yeah.
Cool.
Can you also tell us a little bit about the Bloody Disgusting podcast that you co-host?
It's kind of like, I like to describe it as a weekly morning talk show type situation. There's already so many podcasts that get into analysis like yourselves and sit around a movie. Instead of trying to do that, I just thought that what if we weekly run down what we watched or what we read or what we love, but then catch you up to speed on the news, like the topics you might have missed, headlines you might have missed, and what's coming out for the week. So yeah, it's kind of like your short and sweet catch up for the week.
Hell yeah.
Cool.
Love that.
And you co-host it with Xena, right?
Yeah, Xena and John, who does a horror narration podcast called Creepy. But yeah, Xena Dixon.
Cool. That's awesome. Okay. We talked about your horror history, but Megan, what movie are we discussing today?
We are discussing Event Horizon!
Yay! Okay. To catch everyone up, if you're not familiar with Event Horizon, Paul W.S. Anderson's 1997 film, a rescue crew investigates a spaceship that disappeared into a black hole and has now returned with someone or something new on board.
Bum, bum, bum. Okay, so Megan, take us back. How old were you when you saw this? How did you see this? Tell us everything. What about it terrified you? We want to hear your horror story.
Okay, so this was a little bit older than my origin story here, but I was a teen. I was probably 16, and I can't remember if I picked this out from the video store or my dad did, and it was on the new release wall. I think that's what happened, is he picked this. And I was looking for something to do because I don't know about you, but I was always a night owl as a teen, and everybody would go to bed and I'd still be up. And I decided that I was going to raid his stash of what he'd rented and grab that out and put it on, and I had no idea what I was in for. And so this was literally late. I started this probably about 1:30 at night. And the house is completely dark and silent. Everybody's asleep. And I'm watching this in my room. And it happened fairly quick, because this is a movie that doesn't really waste any time. You get there and stuff starts happening immediately. And it was probably about the time that a character is starting to encounter her son on a table that I did what Mary Beth did with Terrified, where I literally hit pause and noped, and the lights come on, and I'm literally trying to dial all of my friends like a little shit to be like, you're gonna keep me company right now, because I can't handle what's happening on screen. Like, what the hell is this? I was terrified. And that was the first time that I think a movie had affected me on such a visceral level when I was a little bit older, and I'd been watching horror movies, and this was a consistent experience throughout. It wasn't like, here's a Zuni doll at the end of an anthology, or here's one stop-motion scene out of a movie. It was like, this was an onslaught that I had to be talked down from a ledge before I was willing to hit play again.
So did you manage to find someone to talk to?
I did. I mean,
at 1:30 in the morning?
Yes. Yes, I did. Obviously, I had friends who were night owls, too. I mean, we drank sodas all day, jacked up in sugar. I don't know how. But I did find somebody, Ruben, who's probably not ever going to hear this because we haven't talked in a long time. But thanks, Ruben.
If you're out there.
Ruben, you were my hero that night.
Shout out to a real one.
Yes.
Ruben.
Answering the calls at the wee hours of the morning to be like, it's okay. It's just a movie.
Had they seen it before? Had anyone you called seen about her? You said it was new, so I wasn't sure.
I'm pretty sure it was like new on video. I don't think anybody had a clue what I was talking about, but you know it's a real friend when they're like, you sound like you're speaking nonsense, but it's okay.
It's gonna be fine. So Ruben talked you down, and then you finished the rest of the movie?
He gave me the courage to finish the movie, and it was scary, but at least I had that, like, if it gets bad again, I will just dial his ass right back up again. You think that you're sleeping. If I'm not sleeping, you're not sleeping. Yeah.
That's amazing. And Mary Beth is choking.
I'm good. I just thought of that gif from Bad Girls Club where she's like banging the pots and pans together. It's like, if you're not sleeping, like, if I can't sleep, you can't sleep, and they're keeping everybody up.
I've taken everyone to hell with me.
Hell in a spaceship.
Yes.
Hell in a spaceship. Well, and like, so do you remember any other scenes that's like really stuck out to you too? Like, that really, like, got into your head? Or the whole thing? Like, the whole thing's pretty fucking disturbing.
The whole thing, yes, really got me. I mean, the kid stuff was what really was unsettling for me. But, I mean, it was all of it. It was, like, when Baby Bear was committing suicide through an airlock.
Oh, my God.
And, like, what is... That's, like, a high adrenaline scene. It was... the dock when he's getting splayed open. It was the glimpses of hell. Like, I still to this day haven't really seen a depiction of hell quite like that. Before or after. Sam Neill getting haunted in the corridors by his wife. I mean, haunted house movies, especially as I got older, like ghosts and stuff, tend to unnerve me more. Like, I've moved past the dolls, but it's the ghosts that tend to freak me out, because how do you fight that, right? And I think that the ghost stuff was done so well. This is literally a haunted house in space with a hell twist, and they did that so well that it was just... between the haunted house and the ghostly elements and this really kind of foreign look that was cold and sterile and not normal, like, all of that just turned into this perfect recipe of what the fuckery.
Love that, what the fuckery.
Yeah, because when I saw this movie a couple years ago for the first time, and I definitely saw deleted scenes before I saw the movie, because when I saw the movie, I was like, why wasn't that in there? It was like this like extended scene of like, I think it's Lawrence Fishburne seeing glimpses into hell. It's at the kind of towards the end, where Sam Neill doesn't have skin anymore and like grabs his head. And I found this on YouTube to make sure I wasn't making this whole thing up. I was like, am I just like hallucinating? But there are like these really intense scenes of like them all wrapped in barbed wire, like all people wrapped in barbed wire, and it's really bloody and it's really nasty, and I thought that was in the movie, and when I watched it and it didn't happen, I was like, this isn't the right cut. And my boyfriend, now fiance, was like, what are you talking about? Like, this is the right cut of the movie, because he loves this movie. And I was like, but what about the hell part? And he's like, oh no. But I liked it a lot, because I love space. I love Paul W.S. Anderson. The suicide scene really got into my head. Like, that was horrific. Like, that was just extremely hard to watch, and like especially with the woman who's like, baby bear please, and it's like a proxy kid, and it's just so heart-wrenching. And this like, I knew it was going to be disturbing, but I didn't think I was going to get like it is in my head as it did when I first watched it. Like it's much more psychological than I was expecting in terms of like interrogating memory and like looking back in your own mistakes and your past and like getting confronted with all of that while you're confined in this really tiny place that is cold and foreign to you and just like full of shit. And you're like, I have to get out, but I'm also seeing my dead son and my dead wife, and I don't know what's going on.
Yes.
And it's absolutely, that's hell, though. Like, that is a version of hell that is absolutely horrific. You don't know what's real and what's not. You don't know if this dead relative is actually alive. And it's just, like, incredibly upsetting.
That scene with Justin, though, the protracted suicide moment is so... Even watching it now, that is probably, like, the standout moment for me, just because it like hits really hard. The start where he's talking about the darkness and the dark inside me from the other place, and he's like, I won't go back there, and if you could see the things I've seen, you wouldn't stop me. And then his change where he's like, Mother Bear, open the door, I don't want to die in here. And then them trying to give him practical advice to survive as much as he possibly can in space. And then his eyes are erupting. Like, it's such a horrific moment.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
God, you see his, like, veins, like, pushing out, and Lawrence Fishburne is, like, trying to be calm, like, going towards him. Like,
yeah,
it's okay. Like, don't think about it. Yeah, like you said, it's just, like...
And how could you? I mean, it's, like, an insane situation.
But, and, like, it's, like, the saddest part, and it's something that, like, is brought on by the, like, supernatural, horrific stuff, but at the same time, like, it's a real, like, that's what happens to the human body in space, which is great. Like, that also fucked me up. I'm like,
yes.
I don't like space.
Yes.
Space scares the shit out of me. I don't...
Yeah.
Space is very claustrophobic to me, and it always, and like, that just made it even worse. Like,
it's like
okay.
Space, outer space and underwater, I tend to gravitate big time to both, because that's a whole added level of survival that we're not meant to go these places, and there's a reason for that. And now it's not as simple as, well, I'm just gonna go get a motel to escape these ghosts. No.
Right.
No.
There's nowhere to go.
There's like nowhere, yeah.
You are
light years away from home. There's no like
rolling
oxygen.
Out the TV.
We have to go get the oxygen tubes to make sure we can get home. Like, I love that moment where Sean Pertwee's character is like, I don't need oxygen, let's get the fuck out of here. Like, yes. You might think differently on your route home. Not that he...
Probably, but...
Yeah, but, like, the sentiment is like, fuck it. Like, he's the character that's vocalizing what you as a viewer are. Like, let's get out, this place is fucked, let's go, let's go, let's go.
Damned if you do, damned if you don't at that point. It's like, no oxygen or whatever nastiness is happening on this shit.
Because I'd rather suffocate than... whatever the fuck is gonna happen to me.
Yeah.
So, like, you know what, we're good. I don't want to find out.
Because everything about, like, you have Baby Bear's, everything about his suicide attempt is made even more terrifying by the implications of, like, what could he have seen that drove him to that? And, I go back and forth, with... I want to see this cut that we're never going to see, but I also think that holding back probably is the wiser choice in the long run because of the lack of knowing what exactly he saw.
Well, and like it makes it much more of a cosmic horror. Like obviously we're in space, but like it does really lend itself to that kind of unknowable madness.
Yeah.
That I think this movie does really well with. And like again, I like my Letterboxd review from 2018 was like, I want to see hell, what the fuck? Like I was so bummed that we didn't get to see like that version of hell, but then like upon rewatching it, it is kind of like plays into the cosmic horror aspect of like you don't get to know, like hell is such a personal thing, and like a lot in the end it that there's no way to really encapsulate what hell is because hell is different for everybody, and that's fucking scary. You're like, oh great, I get my own little personal capsule of bullshit that I get to deal with, and like that's harrowing.
Ugh.
And I even say that kind of makes me feel gross. Like, ugh. Ugh. So, Terry, when did you first see this movie?
Oh, boy. Okay.
You were going to have to talk about it eventually.
So, this came out in, 97, I think, right? I missed it in movie theaters because at this point in time, I was sort of out of the horror genre, and it wasn't until we saw Scream 2 on VHS, watching the first one on VHS and then watching the second one, that I got pulled back in. And my friend, her name is Allison, I watched, it's the same girl I've talked to on this podcast before that I watched Pulp Fiction with when we talked about that movie. She was very into me. I was so closeted, but I was so not into her. But like, she wanted to watch movies with me. So I was like, sure. And I remember watching this movie and she loved it. And I absolutely hated it.
Oh, okay.
Uh-oh. Did this change, or are you still silently hating it right now?
I mean, hate is a strong word.
Uh-oh. Are we going to toss you on the airlock?
He told me that before I started recording. I was like, oh no, you don't like this movie?
Oh, our vibing is ending now, isn't it?
I know.
The vibe is ending. Now it's Megan and I. Now we're trading off.
The baton is being passed.
Is it warm in here? Things is turning bright red. I can tell already. Yeah, so I really didn't like it back then. But I was the quintessential like film nerd at that point, where it was like, this is Alien. This is Hellraiser. This is all of these movies that are so much better, because I was like seeing all of that kind of stuff. And I remember saying that I thought this director was a hack.
If you can see Mary Beth's face right now. Does this mean you're a Mortal Kombat hater too? Because I loved Mortal Kombat and didn't even realize that they were the same director at the time that I watched this.
Yeah, I did not like Mortal Kombat.
Oh.
I haven't seen it since I first saw it in the movie theater, because we're
over. It's over. We're done. This podcast is over. No more fun. No more Scarred for Life.
So Mary Beth is in need of a new podcast co-host.
It was bound to happen at some point. I thought it was going to happen over my thoughts on The Shining, and it didn't. So
this is the truth.
No, it's Event Horizon, which is even more hilarious.
Who knew that it would be Event Horizon?
This is the truth.
Paul W.S. Anderson,
Scarred for life here.
Yep. But I love Paul W.S. Anderson, but acknowledge that his movies are not for everybody. Like, I know that they are a lot.
I've softened I've softened on him. Like I have seen every single Resident Evil movie.
Not all of them are good.
No.
Not all of them are good.
I actually really enjoyed Monster Hunter. Once I got past the fact that this was not Monster Hunter, but that I've played, because it is nothing like
so you
Monster Hunter.
Gotten over that hurdle with the Resident Evil movies.
No, I sure didn't. I didn't like them when I first saw them, and I've sort of appreciated them for what they are since then. But yeah, I think as far as him as a director, the video game adaptations, what really bothered me, particularly about Resident Evil and Monster Hunter, is that they were nothing like the games.
Yeah.
That's why I liked them.
I was like,
that's not shade to the games, but that's just I just think it's really hard to adapt video games. It's fucking impossible. And so I always had this approach of taking the ethos of the game, but making something different. Like Mortal Kombat, incredible. Camp, incredible bullshit. Goro gets nut punched. It's
it's got Christopher Lambert telling so dumb jokes, and it works.
But again, it's I went in expecting something silly, and so I guess if you are a Mortal Kombat fan in the '90s and you go into it and you're you fucking ruined my game.
I was going in being so irritated that it was a PG-13 horror movie, or based on a game where people's heads get ripped off, right?
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, Resident Evil was very jarring for me because I loved those games, and I have no affiliation with Monster Hunter, so I was free from those chains to just be yeah.
I was free.
I was free. There was no previous expectations.
Mostly I was just annoyed that they did the whole we're focusing on Earth and dropping them into this fantasy world, because the fantasy world of Monster Hunter is so lush and interesting.
That's fair.
And what we got was a desert.
I think I was annoyed by Ron Perlman's wig, but other than that...
Oh my God. The thing living on Ron Perlman's head,
like,
yes.
Why? That is a choice, my friends. That is a choice. And I guess the moral of the story is you can count on Paul W.S. Anderson to make these choices.
You certainly can.
If there's anyone out there that you can count on to make some weird ass choices, it is in fact him, because he'll do it.
Yeah,
and he'll put his wife in it, and good for him.
Yeah,
because she's hot.
I mean, she is. Yeah,
she is, absolutely.
She is definitely. I will say though that I do wish that he would go back to do an R-rated horror at least once more, because it has been so long since he's done that. I think he's fallen into this niche, kind of like sci-fi horror action hybrid, emphasis on the action. So give me something like Event Horizon. If that footage is long gone, which I think years ago there was some news that they had found footage on VHS in a trunk or something. Like, the odds though are that we're probably not going to see that. So give me something else from your mind.
I would love to see him go back to kind of this true kind of horror. Yes, this is sci-fi horror, but this isn't. But it's horror, action sci-fi horror. This is pure horror. I would love to see him now, much far removed from this movie and far removed from, making this as I don't know how old he was, but seeing that many years added onto it and the talent, I would love to see him do something in this nature.
Absolutely. Again. Like, try to scare me. Like, let me see what you can do. I want that, It's like Event Horizon, it's now in the 90s, and now it's harder to go back and watch this because...
Okay, the CGI water bottles floating.
Yeah, like when they say ice, there's ice. And to be fair, like when I revisited this ahead of this episode, I was thinking, like, well, okay, there was no high-def TV, to watch this on, so probably didn't look as glaring then. But now they're like, there's ice floating in the air. I'm like, how can you tell? What is this? It's like
you see the corpse floating, and you're like, and then like the gravity happens, and corpsicle, and that's pretty fucking crazy when the body shatters. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But then when the ice is floating in, like, the hell portal, and then it all comes crashing down, I was like... Oh, no, that's terrible.
Yeah, and the eye thing that doesn't hold up. Like, I appreciate what they were going for, but 90s CG it ages itself so badly, and across the board, not just Event Horizon. Like, lots of, horror movies.
This isn't like shitting on Event Horizon. Like, that was just, it was a new era for doing the CG. CG was becoming like a big thing, and it still looked terrible. But I also do wonder, like you said, I wonder if, because I don't remember it looking bad. No. And I don't know if it was just because, like, you're just new to the CG, or if it was because we're watching it on this boxy-ass television, VHS copy that's probably been watched 100 times and is not exactly the greatest copy. Like, that's what I'm curious.
Yeah, because, exactly, I don't remember it being so bad, but you watch anything on VHS and it's going to mask lots of things. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, that's kind of the format that it was made for. It's not
sterling 4K.
Yeah, not 4K, not even, Blu-ray quality. No. Like, none of this. So, yeah, it looked great back then. Now, okay.
Iffy. But, like, we were talking about the cut that doesn't exist, and it was like an original 2-hour and 10-minute cut, right? I think that was, like, shown to the executives, and they saw it, and they were like, what the fuck is this? And it was, like, gory and nasty, and there's a part in this, for those who haven't seen it, there's like an orgy, like a found footage blood orgy, which I forgot about, like the cool, like, found footage interface, and I was like, I find found footage in everything now. Everything is found footage if you try hard enough in my brain. But, like, there's this, like, it's pretty gross, but you don't see it. It's, like, very quick cutting of everyone from the previous crew, video log of them kind of having violent sex, nasty shit going on around them.
Yeah.
But, like, one of the scenes in the cut that has never been seen is, like, it's much longer, it's much more sadistic, it's much nastier. And even like without any of that, this movie is pretty gross. And I feel like Paul W.S. Anderson has an eye for gore and like really weird, nasty set pieces that I really want to see more of, because I mean, like, this movie is gnarly, but it could have been way gnarlier. I will say, like, this movie could have been so much gnarlier. And I am sad that we haven't gotten access to see it, which goes back to your point of, I want to see Paul W.S. Anderson do another horror movie, because I want to see that man given like carte blanche to make something really gross. Because he hits a lot of, like, Hellraiser points in this. Like, this movie always makes me think of Hellraiser, because the gravity drive, that's what it's called, right? Is, like, but incredible. Like, who was like, yeah, let's make the gravity drive look like this incredible art installation and, like, really, like, in a spaceship. Like, this doesn't look scientific at all.
No.
And it has the ball in the middle. It's just, it looks like
so violent.
Something at home.
It's like... This is not safe.
But she wants the inside peek at Paul. She wants his Cenobite version. What does it look like when you open that lament configuration? But yeah, speaking to what you were saying though, like, I do love the set designs so much. I mean, you've got this crazy round room that looks like this crazy chamber, and then he pops open a panel, and it's this like green lit up hallway of circuitry, and that's kind of like this recurring theme throughout this ship. What Cenobite designed this? Because you've got that gunmetal color, and then it's offset with this green, and that recurs through the whole thing. Like that med bay, you cannot tell me these people didn't fail their psych eval before going to Neptune, because he's got the tray laid out, and it's got bone saws and stuff. What were you doing? What were you preparing for? Were you like, we're gonna go get some space specimens and hack them open? Like, you people were unhinged before you went to hell. That's why you're having orgies.
I do have a question about that, because watching this now, the way that he sets up Sam Neill's eventual. Well, I say eventual, but it actually happens really quickly. And I would hazard to say that he was probably 90% there before he got on the ship. Because I forgot that the way that he said that Paul sets this up, where you have like the scene on the event horizon, and it like focuses in on a man screaming and then goes out of his eyes. So immediately, like, there's like a connective tissue there that maybe the ship is calling him back at some point, and he's like having these nightmares of that ship, because his room, wherever he's staying on that space station, looks like a padded room. Like, it looks like a padded cell that he's already in. So there's like already these like visual cues that shit ain't right with this guy. And I remember when I first saw this, and also watching this again, because it has literally been, I bad at math, since 1998, I would say, since I saw it. So what is that, like 24 years maybe?
It's the first time since you hated it for the first time.
Yes. But I forgot that he's a villain. I thought he was, unlike Sam Neill, coming off of Jurassic Park, all that kind of stuff. Like, he's the hero. And so even watching this again, I was like, oh yeah, no, he's a bad guy.
He is very bad.
Like, incredibly bad.
Yes.
But they like set that up immediately with the padded rooms, with like the kind of connection of Event Horizon with his eyesight, like that kind of aspect on like seeing, can you see?
Yeah.
And it's I think that's a really interesting play against what he is known for, what Sam Neill was known for.
For sure, at the time, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He made such a good villain. I like his descent for a few reasons, because, I remember watching it for the first time and thinking that this ship, whether it called to him from afar or it just preyed on him, I mean, this thing is now sentient and can tell, like, what your weaknesses are. And, clearly he's got some darkness in him. He's the one that loves this ship so much. Great, now you're our new proxy or whatever. But I love that the whole... I'm a sucker for symmetry, and I love that it essentially opens with a nightmare and ends with a nightmare. And it's like, he wakes up in that kind of bay when they're waking up from hypersleep, and ends with another person having a nightmare and waking up from hypersleep. And it's like, yeah, okay, I love bookends. Thank you.
It's actually a really smart way of like beginning and ending the movie. I completely agree. We're talking about Hellraiser, and there's two things in this movie that like really make me go, really? It's when he says, "Have such wonderful things to show you." I was like, okay. Okay. And then later
Fine.
later on, they're talking about the eyes, and he's like, "Where we're going, we won't need eyes to see." And I'm like, really? Back to the Future? Really? Is that what we're doing here?
I mean, at the time, like, that imagery was a little startling. That's not really the type of horror that you were getting at the time. Like, that was new for me. So it's easier to overlook, at least then, when in context of what was being released. Like, it's easier to overlook the stuff, like the cheesy lines. Now, as an adult who's seen this movie many, many times, a lot of the stuff is like, okay, guys, like Cooper shooting himself back to the ship after nearly getting blown to bits. And that shot does not hold up well. Like, I've seen Gravity, kids. I know better now than I did in the late 90s and the turn of the century. Like, that would not work. That would not work. And it's also a little bit harder now that we're in 2021 to be like, this takes place in 2047.
Okay. That is something that I was like, we are so far behind schedule, because the little opening crawl of 2015 first permanent colony established on the moon. I'm like, well, we missed that. And then 2032 commercial mining begins on Mars. I'm like,
whoa, hold the phone. We are so behind schedule.
That's like,
I know.
11 years from now, that shit ain't happening. We are.
I love when that happens in like horror movies from the 90s. You're like, from like before now, and you're just like, oh guys, you were so full of hope.
Yeah,
I know.
You had some lofty ambitions for where we were headed. Like Terminator, we should have already been blown up by now.
I mean, that's
still haven't
very
figured our
like
shit out, guys. Sorry, guys.
Very earnest timeline, because even 2015, that's like 18 years away from.
Yeah. And
I'm like, really? You really thought we were going to be on the moon in 2015?
We have not gotten back to the. Yeah, no, we're. I mean, that's really lucky for us in the long run, because we don't need to be bringing hell back on a spaceship. So, that's great, because a lot of these things we don't really want to be dealing with in our timeline, but you can't help but like giggle at the ambition. Yeah.
And the optimism.
Space can keep whatever fucking hell shit is going on up there. I don't want anything to do with it.
Anything space. We don't want it. I don't need your space hermit crabs, Apollo 18. I don't need your weird spaceship that was a little bit S&M to begin with. So it's fine.
I want none of it.
I'm a little fine at some of these errors. But yeah, some of the dialogue is funny. But some of it works, Sam Neill saying, I am home, as he shrinks into the shadows.
Oof. Yeah, that's a good moment.
So,
that is a good moment.
Yeah, it's give or take. I mean, I think the strengths for me work that I can overlook some of the silliness.
Dude, also is a really good moment for me, the Paramount Picture logo, and you might think that's in jest, but no, my kink is when the logo transitions into the movie. I'm thinking like in Waterworld, how like the Universal and it like, and here it's like Paramount Pictures, and then all of a sudden we're like zooming past them into the sky. I'm like, I love this. That's like my favorite thing. They don't do that enough. They need to do that more. Terry
hates the movie, but the logo is aces.
Hate is a strong word. I am warming up to this movie, and I'm warming up to it more as we're talking about it. I have to say,
about as warm as Deep Space is, though, right?
Hey. One thing that I did find while I was doing a little bit of research on the inspiration for this film is a lot of people that love Warhammer 40,000 think this is an unofficial prequel to Warhammer 40,000.
What?
Because apparently in the Warhammer 40,000 universe, the way that they do space travel is they go through these warps, and warps take them through this other dimension where demons of chaos live, and spaceships that travel through them have to have this shield called the Geller field in order to protect them, because should the field emitters fail or malfunction, the crew of the ship will be at the mercy of all these horrors and will likely be consumed by the demons or become their playthings. And so the way that this movie kind of talks about travel is pulled almost directly from this idea from Warhammer 40,000. So I did find online people were saying that this is like their unofficial like fan theory, that this is like a prequel to Warhammer.
So what you're saying is that we need to start a petition ASAP that he needs to do a Dead Space movie.
Okay. Yes. I am so on board with this. You have no idea. That is fantastic.
I mean, you put this in my head and I want it badly, because if he's going to be doing game adaptations, do this.
Please.
I love Dead Space. And that's why I love Event Horizon so much, is that I loved Dead Space and I played that first, and then I found this and I was like, this is scratching the itch that Dead Space has left behind in my heart.
Well, no wonder you were like, I need the gnarly version, because Dead Space gets freaking gnarly.
Oh,
yeah.
It sure does. The eye
it's
trauma.
Disgusting.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
That's exactly. Just add a little bit, sprinkle some sexual sadism into Dead Space and we're good.
A little amputation and some S&M.
I have faith you can do this.
It is a good point, though, because I do think that without this movie, there are a couple things we wouldn't get. One of them is I think Dead Space does pull directly from this a whole lot. I also think, as I was rewatching this now as an adult, that like Sunshine, I feel is influenced by this movie.
Oh yeah,
there's a lot of things that it is exploring.
That movie in forever.
So good.
Holy shit,
it's so good. I loved Sunshine so much. But
same.
It kind of reminded me, it was like, okay, so there's like the kind of like aspect of the devil. There's like the kind of cosmic horror of people, committing suicide on the ship. There's like
mental
weird things happening, mental deterioration,
deep space isolation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it doesn't necessarily go to hell, but like there's definitely hell on the ship.
The mind is hell.
Yes.
I don't like space.
No.
I don't like space at all.
Space, is not a place I need to go ever.
I also kind of talking about the director's cut, which I really am sad that we probably will never see. I would like to see it just out of curiosity. But there was a scene, at least on Wikipedia, that I was like, oh, what is this? Where Weir apparently hallucinates that Justin turns into his wife in a scene that was like in the original director's cut. I'm like, what kind of scene would that be?
Yeah.
Nothing good in my head. I just feel like nothing, just nothing good.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of, like, scenes that stayed in that might have kind of led to that. And there's, like, the one moment where the doctor, like, Jason Isaacs, holds a scalpel to break up a fight.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so out of character for him. So maybe they were trying to play more with that? I don't know.
But that would have been a weird scene to see. I'm curious, would they have, like, leaned into, like, the sexuality of it, or what exactly? It's weird.
I mean, Mary Beth wanted more sexuality. We almost got it. I mean, she was walking around nude, like, every time she appeared.
She was. A lot of weird nudity in this. Like, why is she naked?
Nothing sexual about this. This is just eerie.
Yeah, that's true. It was just, like, really eerie. It wasn't trying to be sexy. It was just like a weird kind of like uncanny thing on top of everything else. Just like, what the fuck is going on here?
You don't need eyes where we're going, but you don't need clothes either.
No, or skin, it turns out.
Skin.
Or skin.
I mean, they were all completely naked in the little hell glimpses that we got, and then he's like, I'm just gonna take my clothes off and self-mutilate. So yeah.
As you do.
Clothes totally gets in the way of that.
And, like, we talked about this, but this movie is so... like, the scares in this movie are incredible. Like, the gnarly... like, these parts of body horror are incredible. Like, Sam Neill takes out his eyes and takes off his skin and self-mutilates. And just, like, there's these flashes of violence, plus the corpsicle. Like, it's funny when you say corpsicle, but, like, the fact that if you really think about it, the fact that it can be so cold and your body can shatter like that, like, that is wild to me.
It's horrifying.
Yeah. Jason 10 took notes.
It definitely did, but I feel like this movie captures like the horrors of space, not just like from the hell aspect, but from like space is scary as shit. Like there are terrifying things that can happen to the body in space. Like again, going back to the decompression suicide attempt, like I didn't really think about it until now about how this movie captures not only scary horror, but also just like the fact that space does not play by the rules that we are used to. Yeah. And that anything we could do will kill us instantly.
Absolutely. Like I still quote this, not necessarily verbatim, but like there's that speech that Lawrence Fishburne is giving about how fire in space glides like water, and I just loved that. Yeah. It's so good. Total side personal story, but like my husband nearly set me on fire the other day around Halloween when we were cutting pumpkins. I'm jesting.
It's not funny. I'm so sorry.
No.
Husband almost set me on fire.
I'm trying to make this as comical as possible, but like he thought he would clean out his pumpkin we were carving for Halloween with like canned air, but he was turning it upside down and like, oh look, there's fog, and I didn't even think about it when I was like trying to, light it up for the jack-o'-lantern, and that's what I thought of. I thought of Event Horizon like it gliding, like all of us. I didn't even get the flame, luckily I had one of those long lighters, but it was like, poof, right in my face. It just glided, like, yeah. So kids, don't do this at home.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I understand the, like, being, oh, cool, yeah, canned air, that'll get all the shit out of there quickly.
No, like, I mean, it did. His pumpkin looked great. I just, nearly lost my eyebrows.
Singed eyebrows, no
Did
arm
your
hair.
pumpkin look awesome? Was it a good pumpkin?
It was a great pumpkin. It was the creep. I have pictures that I posted on social media, but maybe not on Twitter. But yeah, he had a really great pumpkin. Like, the effect worked for him. It just, like, if I had used a match instead of one of those huge lighters, like, I could have burned myself. But yeah, this is how ingrained horror is in my brain, that I'm thinking of Lawrence Fishburne's speech about how fire just glides. I'm like, oh, this is what he meant. I'm never going to space. This is as close as I'm getting.
It's scary enough.
I don't need to experience that. Exactly. Like, I'm just lighting a fucking jack-o'-lantern. Like, yes. I don't need to know about this, like, real, like, my life at stake.
Gets me close to space.
Being brought closer to space thanks to jack-o'-lanterns and canned air.
Yes. But it also is like, this is as far as I want to get to space. My living room.
Same, honestly.
Space is bad. So is playing with fire, kids.
Now, would you want to go underwater? I'm curious.
No.
Okay.
Like, I have irrational water phobias. I want swimming pools with chlorinated water. Like, and this is why I gravitate towards aquatic horror so much, because things like deep space and deep sea, no. Like, no. I don't even want to wade into water that I can't see what's in there. Like, if it's brown, whatever, murky, and something rubs up against my leg, you better not be next to me because I'm on your shoulders. So.
It's so funny about water in particular, because I've told the story in the podcast before, but like I remember being in Alaska, swimming in a swimming pool inside in Alaska, being terrified that if I was swimming on my back, that Jaws would be under the water and coming to get me.
I had a phobia as a kid in my bathtub that Skeletor's head was going to come out of the faucet. Why? I don't know. Like, so I would be in the bathtub as far away from the drain, or, you would think Pennywise, because I did watch Pennywise, but in my head it was going to be Skeletor. Yeah.
No, never the logical thing.
Never the logical thing.
Never, like, the thing that would make sense. No, absolutely not.
Yeah,
why would that happen?
Child baths were as far away from those as possible.
I do want to talk about the score. I love the score.
It's good.
It was made by Michael Kamen, I'm guessing is his last name.
Yes.
And talk about quite a career as a composer. He did Iron Giant and Pink Floyd. He worked on Pink Floyd The Wall, two of which we have talked about on the podcast.
Wild range of movies there.
He did the music to Lethal Weapon, Life Force, The Dead Zone, Die Hard, Brazil, Adventures in Babysitting. Like, the list goes on.
There is like a really infectious, like high energy to the score that you don't really get with haunted house movies. They're usually kind of like slow and eerie and stuff, and this one's like, no, we have a pulse to maintain.
It definitely kind of reminded me of like industrial was like all the rage in the 90s, and it kind of reminded me like it was, building on maybe what was started in Mortal Kombat with that sort of like kind of techno feel to it.
Maybe he saw the sets and he was like, yeah, I'm getting some major industrial vibes. Look at this med bay.
Look at this med bay.
Look at this med bay.
Look at this torture chamber, aka the core. Like,
yes.
With the spiky walls.
No, but like speaking of the med bay though, Jason Isaacs' character with the hooks.
Yes.
Ooh,
like getting vivisected. That's fucking incredible. Like,
also, hello, Jason Isaacs.
He's so good. He's usually like, there's so much against typecasting. You think of him and he's usually a villain, and he's such a nice guy in this. And Sam Neill, like,
coming off of
Jurassic Park hero. No, what a jerk. Yeah.
Exactly. And just like this, again, this like moment of practical effects of like you see him hanging by the hooks with like open up like a science experiment, and just like I know that there was an extended scene where they did more like, close-ups of his guts and stuff like that. I saw that on YouTube, but like these set pieces, and it made me think of Midsommar just because I love me a good person hanging by hooks part.
Yes.
Like it's just, and like it's for some reason like that kind of display of the human body like open like that is so disturbing but so incredibly cool. I sound crazy, but like horror people get it. You know what I mean? Like it's so disturbing and so fucked up, but also just like, oh my god, like it's almost beautiful to look at. And that's like, again, some parts of this movie you're like, wow, this is really cool to look at and really awful, and I feel kind of gross being fascinated by what I'm seeing, but like I can't look away kind of thing.
Yeah. He does really good death, like, design.
You do death good.
You give me good death, I understand. I'm even thinking ahead to Resident Evil, where he's like, let me vivisect with the laser.
Oh, yeah.
And
one of my all-time favorite deaths.
And just, and so he knows how to make an art form of it. Just go full throttle. Do Dead Space. Please do Dead Space. Give me the monsters.
Seriously.
Give me the gore. Give me all of that. Mia Jovovich can totally be in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. She can totally be the person in it. Exactly. I would love to see him do Dead Space. I mean, you like video games, you like horror, let's do it.
There's action, there's all the things that you love. Just dial it into like more scares.
I'm excited for the remake of Dead Space. By the way,
we are willing it into existence. We are manifesting.
Give it. Yes.
Do we want to give us a wrap up and give us our rating out of 5?
Sounds good.
All right, Terry. How many corpsicles out of 5 do you give Event Horizon?
No pressure, buddy.
Oh my god, Terry's like, I can't. I plead the 5th.
You can
I will
do
not
it.
give a rating.
We will still be friends after this. It's okay. We will just sit in our corner and rebond over Toxic Crusaders coloring books.
There you go. And aquatic horror. I'm there with you with aquatic horror.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I can't give it much more than 2.5 corpsicles. That was just higher than I was going to give it initially. I think there's some really great moments in this. I absolutely, I was joking about the kind of Paramount logo, but I do think I do love seeing that. But
I'm going to tease you from henceforth of like bumping this movie up stars for a logo.
No, kidding aside, I did think that Justin's death was very emotional. Like that is the kind of emotional core that I think the movie was trying to go through for a lot of these things.
Didn't die.
I know he didn't, but in the words of Jason Isaacs' character, he won't look pretty, but he'll live.
Yeah. Can you imagine? Anyways, yes, carry on, sir.
Okay, that moment I think is fantastic. I think there is some individual moments with Weir, with his eyes, with the sort of like nightmare imagery. Even though it gave me like a huge Flatliners vibe when she's chasing after her kid and ends up falling to her death. Like the death scenes in this and the more horror aspects, I think are really, really well done and for the most part hold up to today. But the rest of it, I just find it so boring. I know. I'm sorry.
Oh my goodness.
I'm sorry. So it's 2.5 corpsicles for me.
We will battle it out board game form.
I will definitely do that. I'll take you on for that. What about you, Mary Beth, who's giving me like the most painful look I think I've ever gotten from her before?
Boring?
Yeah.
It was kind of a slog.
I don't know about all that. Anyway. Well then. Wow, that makes me angrier than The Shining. No, I respect your opinions and I respect you, Terry. I am going to have to give this 3.5 corpsicles. I don't think this movie is boring at all. I think that this is a really incredible cosmic horror movie. I think cosmic horror is really hard to do. I think, there are a lot of movies that want to be cosmic horror, and it's hard to get there. And I think this movie really embodies that kind of concept of cosmic horror, not just because it's in space, but it really does kind of that idea of personal hell and madness and what that all looks like, paired with some gnarly moments. I wish it was gnarlier. I always wish things were gnarlier, but I mean, like, I just really love this movie. I love Paul W.S. Anderson, and it's a movie that I can get a lot of my friends to watch, which is very weird, but, like, for some reason, the sci-fi action part gets people to watch this more than most horror movies that I want to watch, so that's also a plus. But yeah, 3.5 corpsicles for me. That word is just so funny to continue to say. But Megan, you have the final word. How many corpsicles out of 5 do you give Event Horizon? I think
Teen Me would have been like 5 out of 5 for scaring me shitless, but so many rewatches later and decades later that I'm probably with Mary Beth and that it's a 3.5 half torso, half corpsicle. Yeah, I really like the idea of there being a half corpsicle.
Just sort of floating there.
I mean, like, but it makes sense in the movie, like some legs just like floating around.
They're just floating.
And you don't know
turn the gravity on, they will crash down and you'll find them. But yeah, I just, there's definitely some dating that's happened since, not just in some of the VFX, but in some of the dialogue and whatnot. But one thing that never really ceases to amaze me is that every time I rewatch, I really love his characterization. You watch them and we've already talked about all of the horror moments that are very effective. We've talked about this crazy production design that's like is from a Cenobite's dream. All of that stuff is really well done and holds up, but it's the cast, you've got Lawrence Fishburne is so great and believable as this no shit captain. Cooper is amazing. He's your likable that speaks sense. Sean Pert, he tends to play bad guys since then, but he's like his moment where he breaks down when he realizes that he's not going to survive what's about to happen is like a split second of brilliance. I mean, you just go down the cast and it's like, They knew what they were doing. They brought it. They knew what they were doing. They brought it. There is no unlikable person. I mean, you even empathize with Sam Neill, who is the villain, essentially. So, yeah. It's not going to be lower than a 3.5, Terry.
Okay, you know what? Here's the thing. You're absolutely right on the characters. No, you're absolutely right on the characters.
We're just giving you shit.
I wasn't thinking about this, but you're right. All the characters have their own personality and their own. They don't feel like just sort of
archetypes,
people.
Right.
Right. They feel like real people. That is absolutely true. And you know what? Because of that, I'm going to bump it up. I'm going to give it 3. It'll be a 3 full corpsicles. Yeah. It's not going any higher than that, but you're absolutely right. Thinking back on the character moments, there are some really good character beats in this. absolutely. I do have one final question because I meant to bring this up earlier. What does this ship smell like? Can you just imagine?
They're corpsicles, right? So it's not like there's rot because they're corpsicles.
Well, I was just thinking the scene in the bridge where she's like walking past and the light flashes and there's like gore just spread across the wall. I'm like, what would that smell like?
But how much of that? Yeah, I don't know. Like, how did that happen and not freeze?
Yeah, also, like, how does smell work in space? Do you think smell is different in space?
Probably. I mean, gravity is a whole different thing, so how does scent travel?
What does space smell like?
I don't know. And then how much of that is actually real? Like, corpsicles are tangible, but, like, there's the whole blood shining thing that happens, and that's not really real. This thing has a way of messing with your mind, so I don't know. I'm going to say it doesn't smell as bad as it would if it were on Earth.
So apparently astronaut Thomas Jones said that space carries a distinct odor of ozone, a faint acrid smell, a little like gunpowder, sulfurous.
Oh, so they're already used to stink.
That just sounds horrible.
They're probably Nick nose blind at that point of just like, something smells a little bit weird, but...
Maybe you don't really give a fuck about stink when you're confronted with hell.
Also, like, maybe everyone's own version of hell smells differently. Who knows?
Yeah. Like, eucalyptus, I'm not a fan of that. Would that be in my version? That would be terrible.
That would be terrible.
Yep. Just eucalyptus. Oh, God, that would be... Oh, wow. Just like, now I'm thinking about, like, the hell of having to smell something nasty, but, like, not, like, even, like, dead, but a smell you hate just for the rest of eternity.
I mean, that was part of this year for me with COVID. Once I got my smell back, there was, like, certain smells that just got stuck in my nose, and I would smell it for a week on a time and not smell anything else other than that one horrible smell. So maybe...
And this is how Terry went to space.
Yes, exactly. I've already been there, y'all. It's not good.
Me with fire and flammable things. Terry with smell. We just need to get Mary Beth a popsicle, and we'll call that a corpsicle. And this is as far as we go to deep space.
Yeah, let's not go into space.
No.
Maybe that's a bad idea.
No.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Meagan, for joining us to talk about Event Horizon. I'm sorry I didn't love it as much as everyone else, but where can our listeners find you, and what do you have coming up that you'd like to share?
First of all, thank you so much, and thank you for letting me peer pressure you into a 3, even though you really didn't want to. I love you for that. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at HauntedMeg, where it's probably the easiest way to keep track of everything, or at BeDisgustingPod if you're interested in weekly up-to-date news and releases and stuff like that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Or on Bloody Disgusting. I'm probably all over that page.
Yes, you are, and it's incredible. Read her writing. It's all so good.
Oh, thank you.
So, listeners, you've heard from us, but we want to hear from you. What was your experience with Event Horizon? Send us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com or reach out to us directly on Twitter. I'm at MB McAndrews.
And I'm a Gaily Dreadful.
And of course, don't forget to follow the podcast on Twitter at Scarred Podcast.
And please, if you're listening to us on iTunes, just go out there and give us a little rating, give us a little review, give us a subscription. It's good for you.
It's good for your health. Thank you to Eric Power for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our music. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Please stay safe out there, but most importantly, stay creepy.
And until next time.
As a person with a very deep voice, I'm hired all the time for advertising campaigns. But a deep voice doesn't sell B2B, and advertising on the wrong platform doesn't sell B2B either. That's why if you're a B2B marketer, you should use LinkedIn ads. LinkedIn has the targeting capabilities to help you reach the world's largest professional audience. That's right, over 70 million decision makers all in one place. All the big wigs, then medium wigs, Also small wigs who are on the path to becoming big wigs. Okay, that's enough about wigs. LinkedIn Ads allows you to focus on getting your B2B message to the right people. So, does that mean you should use ads on LinkedIn instead of hiring me, the man with the deepest voice in the world? Yes. Yes, it does. Get started today and see why LinkedIn is the place to be to be. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room?
It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together, we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th. We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.